I'm going to call the CAMPO meeting to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Bagwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Novak, Member Dodson,
Here.
Member Erb, Member Henderson,
Here.
Member Maloney,
Here.
Member Schutte, ex officio Member Rosenberg.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Thank you so much. We're now on to agenda item number 3, which is our public comment period. Do I have anyone that would like to do opening public comment? Nope. Okay. We're now on to agenda item 4, which is possible action for approval of our minutes of May 10th, 2023. Does any member have a correction, change, update? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion for approval, please.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the May 10th, 2023 meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect that was unanimous. We're now on to agenda item 5A, which is for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding the Carson Area Transportation System Management Plan, the final report, including potential approval of this report. Ms. Schutte, may I have your disclosure, please?
Yes, you may. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose conflicts of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. My nephew is Chris Martinovich, who is employed by Carson City and will be presenting this item. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his service with the city, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other resident of Carson City. NRS 281A.420 only requires abstention in clear cases, and the independent judgment of a reasonable person in my position would not be impacted by my familial relationship. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting on this matter.
Thank you so much. I can see Mr. Martinovich is ready to go.
I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm also going to invite our consultants, Kimberly Horn, Molly, and Annabelle, who will be taking through the bulk of the presentation. If we could go to get the presentation up, hit the button. Perfect. And so we're going to take you through a presentation here and then a period of questions or discussion. I want to spend a little bit of time on this slide providing a little bit of background, a short summary background on the project. So if you recall, this project really began in 2019, and we consulted with Kimberly Horn in 2020 for the development of a transportation system management plan to do a number of items. And as it stands today, the intent of the plan is really outlined by these goals and objectives that are here on the screen, with the first one being identifying the true costs of maintaining our system, second one, identifying program efficiencies, third one, understanding our program needs, and the fourth, looking at data-driven decisions. And the intent is, and I think we've achieved all these through this plan. And so the intent really is, as it stands today, as I mentioned, is to kind of go through and summarize what we've done related to these goal areas. And so I want to touch on a few of these for a moment. So the first one there, identifying the true cost of maintaining and operating our system. Through this plan, we were able to categorize and collect a large number of assets related to our traffic signals and our signalized systems. Not only traffic signals themselves, but also things like rapid rectangular beacons and other flashing beacons throughout not only Carson City, not only CAMPO, but the region that Carson City maintains, including the traffic signal up on USA Parkway and Electric Avenue on the north end, all the way down to the farthest south traffic signal on 395 in Douglas County. And this plan allowed us to collect that data, put that into our asset management system, and really understand the relationships of how all that data works together. We also now have a much better understanding of, because we were able to collect those assets, to really understand the cost of maintaining those year over year. How much staff time does it take? What are the best practices to maintain those? How do we go about doing that? And this plan has helped us identify that. We've also wanted to identify our program deficiencies, and we've done that through the recommendations of the plan, do that a number of ways by identifying areas where we can make improvements to our particular agreements, where we can understand where we're lacking and how we can get better. And a large part of that was conducted as part of a workshop that we held early in the project with our partner agencies. And we outlined areas where we wanted to grow and the steps to get to those particular areas and where we wanted to grow. And so we achieved those strategic goals through this plan. We also wanted to better understand our funding and our staffing needs. So it allowed us to do an assessment of our existing funding structures through not only the street operations funds for Carson City, the regional transportation funds, the CAMPO funds, understanding what we have and where we spend the money and the potential needs to maintain our system going forward. And lastly, and I think this is also important, same as the other ones, is that we're really looking to identify data-driven decisions to prioritize and even identify particular projects, whether that's through our pavement management plan or whether that's through a process in coordination with NDOT through the One Nevada plan. It really helps us identify specific performance measures, specifically travel time index, planning time index, where we can understand how our existing system is operating and where we're seeing deficiencies so that we can identify projects to work on correcting those deficiencies. So I think, we've through this plan identified those goals. Those performance measures, we're going to start seeing some of those roll out in our network monitoring report, where we can now report on certain corridors on an annual basis. I know I've received comments from Commissioner Novak about desire to see additional reporting regarding street maintenance, traffic signal maintenance activities as part of our street report that we receive at the Regional Transportation Commission. This plan helps us identify and understand so that we can report on those metrics going forward. So there's a number of elements in this plan that I think it does achieve and gets us in the right direction. Does it touch on everything we could touch on related to traffic signals and traffic signal operation and traffic operations in general? No, it doesn't. We could enhance additional areas. Does it dive into and flush out every detail of all the recommendations that are outlined in the plan? No, it doesn't. It doesn't do that. But we could spend a number of plans and a large number of effort fleshing out all those areas. And over time, I think staff will. You could pick a particular area, whether it's performance measures or anything else, and really spend a lot of time saying, well, are these enough performance measures? Do we want more performance measures? How do we do that? And so this plan sets sort of the foundation for outlining how we can go forward in a number of different areas, depending on the direction of this board, a policy board, as well as input received from our partner agencies like NDOT or Douglas County or Lyon County or any of the others. So I think that's really the intent of the plan here, is to set that foundation and move us into a variety of different areas depending on how we move forward. I understand there's a variety of technical and other comments and questions we'll receive from all of you. I've received some preliminarily, and if there's others, happy to entertain those. And we can make those recommendations and corrections and edits to the report going forward. But that's where I'm going to leave it tonight. I'm going to pass it on to Molly and Annabelle to take us through the presentation, and then we'll have time for questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So on your slide that you see in front of you right now is some of the major project tasks that were conducted as part of this transportation system management plan. We're going to go through some of the first tasks relatively quickly, but then focus on the performance measures and benchmarks. In previous meetings that we had with our technical advisory committee meeting, there was a lot of discussion of including additional performance measures and benchmarks, and therefore we did rescope one of the last tasks of this project in order to incorporate that and address the needs and questions that came up during the technical advisory committee meetings. The final report structure, which was provided in advance of this meeting, consists of the following chapters, and we're going to discuss those a little bit in more detail. Section 1 summarizes the project background, goals, and objectives. Section 2 provides an overview of the stakeholder engagement for the project. Section 3 includes a summary of the existing conditions, including the physical elements that were collected, along with the review of the logistical elements. Section 4 describes a self-assessment workshop methodology and the outcomes for the project. Section 5 includes the life cycle costing methodology and results. Section 6 provides recommended performance measures and the benchmarks for CAMPO based off of the data-driven approach and review of national best practices. And Section 7 describes the recommendations that resulted from the development of the study. We also have a lot of appendices that include a lot of the background information, such as the schema for the data that was collected, spare parts inventories, peer city review, and various other items that were conducted as part of this project. The stakeholder coordination part of this project included meeting with our technical advisory committee meeting, which was comprised of CAMPO, Carson City Public Works, Douglas County, NDOT, and Story County. And then we are here today in front of the board to provide an update of the final version of the report, or the draft final. The first major task that we completed as part of the project was the data collection. We did use LiDAR to collect signs and supports and other signalized intersection information along the corridors that we identified for data collection. And this other related data collection associated with the intersections included signalized intersections, signalized pedestrian crossings, flashing beacons, and radar speed feedback signs. Additionally, CAMPO staff also collected data that included pedestrian push buttons, curb ramps, cabinets, and new signalized crosswalks. All of this data, whether it was collected through the LiDAR process or through CAMPO, was all combined together, and it's all compiled in Carson City's GIS system. And there was a new schema that was developed in relationship tables that have allowed them to use this data for future information gathering, not just for this project, but for other purposes of asset management and inventories into the future. We also completed a self-assessment workshop that was based off of a modified version of the Federal Highway Administration Capability Maturity Model framework, which includes 4 major dimensions of evaluation elements: communication culture, performance measurement, systems and technology, and business processes and regional collaboration. We do have a list of outcomes from the workshop that was developed and is provided in the report and organized into short and long-term actions. And again, our technical advisory committee took part in that workshop. Once we were able to collect all of the data and process the data, we were able to do the needs assessment and a life cycle costing analysis. We conducted the needs assessment as part of the workshop, and then we also looked at the life cycle costing for the actual inventory that we had conducted. And so this life cycle costing included the traffic signal system, traffic signal vehicle detection, and other traffic-related signal and ITS items. And we looked at various service equipment, service lives, and the number and types of equipment that were out in the field. And we looked at a 30-year time frame. And based off of the information that we collected and other national best practices, it looks like there's a deficit of over $1.2 million based off of the infrastructure that we were looking at as part of this project. To establish which data CAMPO should use to collect and monitor the performance of the area's transportation system, CAMPO identified road segments for the performance monitoring and reporting. These segments are included in the report, and they really consist of the region's more heavily traveled signalized corridors. CAMPO identified these corridors for performance measured data collection to help make informed decisions on capital improvement prioritization, as well as to track incremental operational improvements. We also wanted to focus this on data that was readily available to CAMPO, and so that includes INRIX and TRINA data. INRIX is data that NDOT actually purchases, and it's available for all the entities within the state to utilize. So we wanted to make sure that we were doing something sustainable and something that it doesn't require a lot of money to be paid each year to gain licenses to obtain the data. This corridor level performance data can assist with development and execution of monitoring through conducting before and after studies offer along a site-specific corridor or sub-corridor. For example, if the signals get retimed, then you can go and do a before and after study because the data is actually stored historically as well. Or if there's a complete streets project that's put into place, there can be some before and after studies that can be conducted. You can also look at long-term trends of how the corridor is performing over a long-term period. And we can also look at prioritizing signal retiming efforts based off of the data that's collected along these corridors. There were 2 primary metrics that we used, and those were travel time and planning time indices. These are both based off of travel times or speeds. The travel time index is the amount of time a trip takes compared to its free flow travel time. So it's really more of a direct measure of delay along the specific corridor. And then we have the planning time index, and that's the day-to-day variability of a particular trip. So if you left your house every day and went to work, it's measuring the variability of that specific trip over multiple days. So if you look at a commute trip, you take that approximately 20 times in a month, and the planning time index is the 19th worst travel time that it takes you to get from your home to work, which is what we consider the 95th percentile, compared to the free flow travel time of that specific trip. And so we calculated the free flow travel time for each corridor based off of the typical off-peak travel times in order to compare these to what was going on during the more peak travel times. This chart shows the corridors that we identify with CAMPO for performance reporting. They're split into whether or not the corridors are coordinated or uncoordinated corridors. Coordinated corridors are corridors that operate with signals that operate as a group, and uncoordinated are where the signals do not operate or communicate with each other along the specific corridors. This chart also shows the average annual daily traffic for each of these corridors. We looked at 8 coordinated corridors based off of signal timing groups and 13 uncoordinated corridors based off of the major, just other major existing corridors within CAMPO that had the existing data that was available. And these were identified and coordinated in coordination throughout the project. We then looked at the TTI, the travel time index for 2021 and 2022 for each of the different corridors, alongside with the 2021 average annual daily traffic data, which was the latest that was available at the time, along with signal spacing along the corridors. Overall, there was a general positive trend for the travel time index from 2021 to 2022, with all but a few corridors decreasing, which means that there was less delay along these corridors during the peak time, and these are for the peak time specifically. Yes?
So with less delay for the peak times, could that impact like Stewart Street or 395 Stefanita Airport because more vehicles are able to travel through, and so could that present more delay in some of these areas? Is that some of the info you find, or is there not that correlation?
We didn't specifically do an analysis of that. That's probably something that would be done more as part of like a travel demand model
Okay,
at that type of a level, looking at congestion and things like that.
all right, thank you.
On the next slide, from a reliability standpoint, the travel time variability did increase for most corridors in 2021 to 2022. And so again, that's the planning time index, so how reliable the corridor is. So while delays were decreasing, there was some increase in travel time reliability. And based off of what some other state DOTs consider what's reliable versus moderately unreliable versus unreliable, the majority of the corridors fell within the moderately unreliable category for the CAMPO region. One of the purposes of this project was to make recommendations for how to use the performance data to improve operations in the future. And we intend to track travel times based off of congestion measures over time as this data is available. But looking into the future, CAMPO didn't want to be limited by the data that's just available now. This particular study was focusing on what we can use with the available data that we have now, but there are the opportunities for investments in performance measurement that could help improve operations throughout the region. And so we looked at 3 different major options, and the answer could be one of these 3, or it could be a hybrid of these 3 based off of the needs of CAMPO at the time. The first one is ATS-PM, which that is an option that's used widely across the country, and it does provide some very rich signal-related performance data. However, it requires a lot of infrastructure and maintenance. So there is cost associated with having that infrastructure and maintenance with that particular option. There's also trajectory data sets that can be purchased from companies that harvest vehicle speeds from cars. These data can be used to identify travel times, delays, and identify ways signal timings could be improved. There's a lot of different data out there. This is new data. So there is some instabilities currently in the marketplace with some of these emerging technologies that are out there. And then finally, there is the traditional approach to traffic signal operations, is to simply take turning movement counts in the field, do travel time runs, and that is an option to do it. It is labor intensive and unlikely to be able to look at the entire network in any given period of time. So in addition to the recommendations from the operations side of things, there are a number of recommendations that are included within the report. These aren't all the recommendations that are included on the slide, but these are a sampling of some of the types of recommendations that are included. And so these types of recommendations include additional maintenance staff for proactive maintenance based off of FHWA best practices. They include consistent language and terms among all the signal system agreements with the partnering agencies. They provide instructions for how to read the signal timing plans that are provided to consultants during signal timing requests. So there's a wide variety of recommendations that are included, and this is, again, just a sampling that's included in the document. And so really the next steps, there's also a next step section, and it's important that that CAMPO work closely with NDOT to ensure that the applicable recommendations are incorporated into, there is a planned Northern Nevada Traffic Management Center. So if that happens, make sure that that's being coordinated. Also to work with staff to start the coordination of hiring additional staff that had been identified as part of the report. There's implementing actions from the self-assessment workshop, establishing consistent language and terms among all the signal system agreements. And as Chris mentioned, there's a lot of different recommendations that came out of the study, and there's opportunities to dive into different facets of those to really dial down into making those changes and moving forward with transportation system improvements within the region. And with that, that is the end of our presentation.
Does any members have a question? Ms. Schutte?
Thank you so much. A question and a comment. Regarding the consistent language, which absolutely I agree, what are some of the areas where language is inconsistent? Is it based around using different programming? Yeah.
And I'd have to remember, and I don't have the exact number of agreements, but NDOT right now has quite a few agreements that are with CAMPO for maintenance of the different traffic signals. And so there's not just one blanket agreement, there's lots of different agreements, and there's different terms in those agreements of reimbursement and things like that. So that's the type of recommendation, is to make that language consistent from signal to signal, as well as some of the agreements that CAMPO has with Story County and the other counties to try and provide consistency across the board.
Okay, because that was, later on in the report, the coordinating with district attorney regarding interlocal agencies in Nevada revised statutes with, in respect to NDOT purchasing signal equipment. Is that what this is about, like the different reports or different contracts, rather, that the language or the wording is not consistent or not always consistent, or different agencies use different terminologies?
Chris Martinovich, I think Molly touched on it in the fact that there is a number of agreements with a variety of languages, and that if we were to move forward to implement a more common agreement, then coordinating with the district attorney's office on a more common language, working with the attorney general's office on all of those types of legal terminologies and things is definitely something we should streamline and simplify.
Awesome. I just loved seeing that. And then, thank you. And then my comment, and I always appreciate so much how it was listed, what are the impacts of the improvements, or the true impacts, the true costs of those improvements. And I also think about what are the savings of the improvements, and that might be a little more difficult to measure, but I think it's so important, because improvements and the working on the same terminology and the language, all of that reduces time spent, reduces confusion, so there's that cost savings. So thank you. Great report.
Mr. Novak?
It was a good report for 600,000 plus. I mean, you guys did quite a bit. But I had a couple of questions, and I had sent a bunch to Chris already. I guess the one that started with, why do we have some coordinated corridors and others that are not coordinated? And some of them are fairly busy. So I just wanted to get your take, or should we coordinate them or not? Or, what's your feeling on that?
Well, I'll let Molly answer if we should or shouldn't coordinate them. In terms of why we do or we don't have them coordinated, it has to do with communication. So we don't have the infrastructure in the ground today to be able to tie all of our signals so that they can all talk to each other. So they're independent of one another. We can do some timing configurations to try to get them to time out so that when a car reaches it, that, you go through them, but they're not actually coordinated. So that we have a very limited number of coordinated corridors where the signals are actually connected to each other, where they talk to each other and can adjust based on, what they're seeing. But that's where we are today, and that's why we have what we have.
Right. And I would add, my definition of a complete street is something that you do with that as well, okay? Just my, thought, and I'd like to listen to what Molly has to say.
Yeah, I think one of the things too with being able to look at this data that's readily available, there are, for those corridors that are uncoordinated where the infrastructure doesn't exist, there's the opportunity to go out and do some retiming and tweaking and then see, did that improve the travel time throughout the corridor? Did that include the planning time index? And there's the opportunity to do a lot of that without actually going out and investing in the infrastructure if the funding isn't available for the infrastructure. So there's some benefits of using technology and the available data to make tweaks out in the field to make things operate better without the ability to coordinate a particular corridor.
And then kind of following up with that, might not be directly in the scope, but there's current signals and there's future signals coming. Appian Way, Stewart and Little supposed to have one, NDOT's going to turn one on at Warrior Way. Anything to add to the report about that or recommendations we need to follow?
I don't have any additional to add to that. I will say that when Appian comes on, that's going to be a trigger for retiming South Carson Street corridor. That's going to be in close coordination with close proximity with adjacent signals. And so coordination in that particular corridor, which already has connectivity, will be important. Addressing future signals, I don't know that it's directly in there. We can definitely take a look at that, but I don't know that trying to address all future signals is something we want to necessarily do in this particular report, but I understand your comment.
Yeah, there's more comment, right? So I don't know if that affects your staffing overall, but, Carson does quite a bit for the whole region, and the region's going to keep adding signals, so, all right, you can see what's coming. Okay. One other item, it was buried in the appendix, and it's on the signs side, and it said a bunch of those signs fail for retroreflectivity, and that's in one of the monthly reports we get about Carson replacing traffic signs. Is that being addressed, or will it be as a result of this?
As far as what we replace is, I don't know if any of these particular signs that have been documented in the report have been replaced or not. I can't speak specifically to the individual signs off the top of my head. I think this report documenting what signs we do have so that we can put them in our asset management structure can help us make sure that they get completed and not forgotten about at some point in the future.
Yeah, so essentially there's an overlap between the traffic signal part of the house and the street operations part. And I know you're trying to pull it together. You can only do so much. And I guess the last comment was on your ITS system architecture, the one paragraph. I think realistically that needs a lot more work between CAMPO and NDOT and to follow the architecture, and there's going to be opportunities to coordinate. And so far I'm seeing a separate system in Carson and a separate freeway system. And yeah, if you reference what happened in Vegas with the FAST system, yeah, I remember that one. So look at the big picture, and hopefully this Northern Nevada TMC effort will make things work. That's all I got for now.
Does, Mr. Dotson?
Molly, I guess my question, it might seem like it's a bit into the weeds, but it has to do with the planning timing index. And it looked like the numbers that you showed for those in the slide were a little different than the ones in the report itself. And it matters to me in that report. There's a comment that it looks like the PTI for the corridors, in one place it says it's below the 1.3 threshold. That slide clearly showed that it was way into the moderate reliability side. toward the unreliability. Is that something that you could look at, or am I misinterpreting something there?
We can definitely double check that. There were separate calculations done as part of some earlier phases. We looked at PTI over the entire course of the day versus PTI during the peak period times. So the slide is peak period times, but we will make sure that that's called out in the report, which ones are peak period versus overall.
Yeah, just, it seems to make a difference, you know, in terms of where the
Definitely.
system is.
Yep, absolutely. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Ms. Maloney?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. Overall, I think this plan represents a huge step forward, right, for the region, and so I think this is a tremendous accomplishment. It was really fun to go through and see it, and I know how much work went on behind the scenes with staff and with Kimley Horn and with NDOT and the TAC members, and so that's a huge success. I think I provided some comments to Chris ahead of the meeting, primarily technical and non-substantive in nature. I was a little disappointed for, I think it was 600,000. From a non-substantive perspective, there was, I guess, some sloppiness in the document. I noted in Appendix B, excuse me, there were several tables that had wrong or missing or inconsistent headings. And so I guess just maybe some cleanup. A lot of the figures I felt like were kind of blurry. So maybe we could get those sort of just replaced just for the cost of the document, just to make sure it's buttoned up really well. But the only substantive comment I had was I noted in some of the slides and then in the report, there was a map that showed Fairview and 5th Street as signalized. And I don't know if that went into any of the calculations in terms of need, like for the recommendations for additional staff. So I just wanted to make sure that that was maybe corrected, just so we didn't overstate the cost or the need in the final recommendations. But that was just a minor thing. And again, this was a tremendous accomplishment. Really, grateful for the partners, Douglas County, Lyon, and Story to participate, and NDOT, of course, to fund it. So huge hurdle. So good job.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. Where does the Highway 50 East corridor begin?
I'm checking real quick because I don't recall off the top of my head. I believe it's Salomon.
Solomon?
Mhm.
Okay.
Commissioner Henderson, your particular corridor in Lyon County is under the category of East William Street and Lincoln Highway. That is the Lincoln Highway portion, is the one that out in Lyon County. That one begins after College Parkway, and that's where the break is at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
Great report. I have a few questions on 395 for the travel time index. I'm just curious, since Stephanie and Johnson Lane are high T's, is the travel time index not representative to the full 33,000, or just the traffic that's going to stop at the signal? Because the southbound doesn't stop at all, right? They're high T's. So how's that work into the travel time index?
It takes into account the fact that those vehicles would not have to stop, and that is the high T is an more efficient signal. So one would expect that you would have, lower travel times versus if you had a traditional T intersection.
Okay, and that's reflected in the travel time index?
Right.
Okay. And then on the, I guess, I apologize, I haven't been able to see the appendix yet, but as far as the replacement cycle summary, so each signal location is spelled out in the index on when they need to be replaced and how, on the replacement cycle? Is that like spelled out how old they are, when do they need to replace? And is that information been shared with NDOT for their future projects?
So the replacement cycle schedules are based off of the total number of the specific types of infrastructure that are included within the region. And we look at how often do these want to be replaced, and then we're spreading them out evenly over the course of that to keep a more consistent budget where feasible, so that from year to year, there's not a massive increase in budget versus the next year, there's a much lower budget needed. So
Okay,
when we did that, it was more to massage throughout, and so it's not specifically do X, Y, and Z at a specific location. It's there's this many controllers, and you should replace them on this regular basis, and here's how many you should do per year over the 30-year life cycle.
okay. That's it. Thank you.
So for me, I'm just having, what's the right word for this? A little bit of trying to understand between 5A and 5B, because they're certainly related documents, because on this one, you're asking us to, on 5A, you're asking us to approve the project as presented. So maybe I can try to articulate a little bit here. So there were just some cleanup, which is typical when you get a big document, right? So is that something you as a company would automatically do, is go through and fix any typos or mismatches in labels and things like that? And that would not cost us, but like today, presenting, that would be a chargeable event. I'm just trying to understand, because I don't think it can approve it as presented, because we want you to make some of the finer little detail changes so that we can have a really good report going forward. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of your thoughts on this. It's you, sorry.
So yes, we had planned in our budget to address comments after having this board meeting. So that was something that we had planned on doing. It's something that we had included in the cost for the project, is addressing final comments that we received at this meeting this evening. So that's something that we intend to do, and address comments, but it is something that is part of what our scope and budget for the project includes.
Okay, because I just want to, I'm always interested or wanting a project to be accurate and as good as it can be. None of us are going to escape typo land. There's no such thing. But we want the report as good as we can have it, so that it's usable, right, for those years that continue on, and we don't have people concentrating on the mislabeled document. I want you to get into the meat of the document and understand it. So I think some of the comments today about making sure that the reader understands the table, and that is it peak only, or is that one across the whole timing, so that no one's misunderstanding the data. So I'm wondering and thinking kind of out loud with all of us about approving the plan, but not as presented, as discussed on the record, so that the changes that we talked about, or the clarifications that we all mentioned, would get picked up for the final report. And I want to make sure you have enough information from the things we've discussed today to understand what you need to update. I guess that's the way I'm trying to say it. Yes?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Does that make sense where I'm trying to go on there? So it's like, it's not as presented, but again, great baseline documents and information. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about is you draw recommendations on staffing patterns, or what we need in the staffing. And what was that based on? How did you determine I need this many more of something?
The Federal Highway Administration has some best practices that say, here's how much time should be spent, how many man hours or person hours should be spent per signal on maintenance activities, preventative maintenance. They have various thresholds that they've set, and so that is taken based off of the number of traffic signals that are within the region that are maintained by CAMPO. And that's where those staffing numbers come from, is the nationwide best practices.
Okay, so best practices are not necessarily what the national average of reality is, right? Or are they? It is, that's kind of what I'm after. Is that what nationally is actually being staffed overall, or it's just an industry standard? Hard to achieve the best practice, I'm gonna guess.
Yeah, and I can't, I mean, I would have to
Okay.
double check specifically how that is specifically worded before I could answer that specific question.
That's fair enough, because it's difficult, you know. Obviously, you need enough staff to do the work, but you also have to be able to pay for the staff to do the work. So I don't mind things indicating, you know, based on best practices, you may wish to consider hiring da-da-da-da. And so I just, again, if that could be clarified or just, again, in there, I would appreciate that. Because, I don't know, we don't have enough money to do everything that we're going to read today. But let me open this up for any public comment in case there's some more that anyone would like us to address before it's finalized. No others? Okay. You never know. Somebody might come up with something that we all read right through. All right, are we ready then for a motion? Okay. So instead of as presented, it will be as discussed on the record.
I'll take a shot.
Okay.
I move to approve the Carson Area Transportation System Management Plan with corrections as discussed on the record.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect that was unanimous. Thank you very much. Thanks for the hard work. And we'll trust in Chris to just run through the items on that final. Thank you so much. Okay, we are now then on 5B. That makes more sense now that we got 5A done. Discussion and possible action regarding ratification of a second amendment to cooperative agreement P301-19-804 with the Nevada Department of Transportation to fund the Carson Area Transportation System Management Plan, if we get these any longer, with amendment to changing the agreement end date from June 30, 2023 to September 30, 2023. Ms. Schutte, may I have your disclosure, please?
My nephew is still Chris Martinovich, and he is the presenter on this item. My disclosure and analysis from item 5A applies here as well. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his city service, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other Carson City resident. Therefore, I have no disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting.
Thank you so much. Mr. Martinovich, on this item, it's really just to move the date to allow them to do the
Correct.
discussion that we just had on the previous item.
Yes.
Is it right? I mean, does anyone have a question then? Ms. Maloney?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On packet page 95, it talks about the scope of the project, and there's a phase 3. Is that intended to happen still, or was that part of the scope change that was discussed? Or I guess I'm just asking for just a quick blurb on what's remaining in addition to the technical changes, if anything.
Thanks for the question. Phase 3 was rescoped to more detail of the performance measures, so that item's been redone from the original scope.
All right. Anybody else? Okay. So let me talk technically then, because I want to kind of work through this. So do you see this something, Mr. Martinovich, you'll be directly working with them then just to close this out? And no other items other than corrections and things that we just had on the record, and that will end this project?
That would be all we would be doing, is addressing the comments that were brought up by the board, making their technical edits, typos, and items that have been brought to our attention, and then completing the project. I don't foresee this being a super long effort. September 30th is more than enough time to complete those items.
And you'll be able to take this one off the shelf and call it done.
We'll be able to call it done.
Okay, we like that, right? Anytime we can call them done. Anybody else have any?
Well, the report will be done. And
Yeah,
then
not the
Then
work.
the fun begins.
Okay, you took
right.
his balloon away. He had it for just a moment in time. Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
I will move that. I move to ratify Amendment 2 as presented.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Okay, we're now on to 5C, which is discussion and possible action regarding the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization Public Participation Plan, including potential approval of our plan. Miss Norman is up for this one. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Give me just a second.
Starts with the technology for a public participation plan. So,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kelly Norman, Senior Transportation Planner for the record. Staff is here tonight to present the draft public participation plan, discuss the results of the public participation survey, and ask for the approval of the updated public participation plan. CAMPO went through a robust and thorough examination of the current PPP and examined methods of how to include the new requirements and updates. A summary of this process is explained in Exhibit 1, the CAMPO PPP analysis. Staff reviewed federal and state requirements, current practices and tools. We met with local and regional partners, peer agencies to discuss the best practices and successful, meaningful public engagement methods. Staff conducted a public participation survey and completed the draft public participation plan in May, which has been available to the public for comment since May 11th, 2023, for the required 45-day public comment period. 2 public comments were received and noted in Exhibit 4 with staff responses. CAMPO staff updated the public participation goals in Section 2 of the PPP to include increased public engagement, to emphasize the consideration of the concerns and priorities of residents, to implement equitable and inclusive public engagement, to strengthen community partnerships, and to provide reasonable accommodations and access for everybody. Section 3 of the Public Participation Plan reviews federal requirements, including additional emphasis on virtual public engagement and inclusion of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. CAMPO remains compliant with the Nevada Open Meeting Law, including proper notices, meeting agendas, public comments, and posting. CAMPO reviewed our current practices to understand how to update public participation and outreach goals in a meaningful way. Staff met with several local, state, regional, and partner stakeholders, including Carson City, Lyon, and Douglas counties, the Washoe Tribe of Nevada and California, who also invited staff in person to a Stewart Community Council meeting, the FHWA, and the Federal Land Management Agency, who reviewed the draft PPP and provided comments, and the NDOT Public Information Office. CAMPO also engaged with similar-sized MPOs such as Bend in Oregon, Dixie in Utah, and Lake Havasu in Arizona, and the Washoe RTC here in Nevada. Staff provided a review of these and more similar sized MPOs and their practices in Exhibit 1, the CAMPO PPP analysis. Based on conversations with these stakeholders, staff comprised Section 4 of the Public Participation Plan, which focused on two main types of engagement: in-person and digital or virtual engagement. The in-person engagement examples include the CAMPO board, other commission meetings, stakeholder meetings, and community events. Virtual and print engagement includes electronic newsletters, websites, social media, press releases, surveys, and accessible materials. On March 9th, CAMPO opened a public participation survey to the public in English and Spanish. Staff left the survey open for almost 3 months while providing many in-person opportunities for the public to participate. There were 103 survey participants. Exhibit 3 has the full public participation survey results. And I'll go over some of the survey results with you today as well. The first question that we asked within the survey was, do you feel that transportation planning is important to you and your family? 95% of participants answered yes, it is important. We then asked how people would prefer to receive information or interact with CAMPO staff. The two highest ranking choices including updating through project websites and social media. We then asked what types of transportation people were most likely to participate in. So roadway planning and bicycle and pedestrian planning consisted over 50% of the respondents, and transportation safety and public transportation consisted of over 1/3 of the respondents. We then asked how likely someone was to attend an in-person meeting, 0 being lowest, 5 being highest. 1/4 of the respondents said that they would not attend an in-person meeting. It was very not likely. But 41% of respondents answered 4 or 5, which would be more likely to attend an in-person meeting. We then asked if people were likely to attend an online meeting. Almost 50% of respondents answered that they were more likely to attend an online public meeting. Staff wanted to be aware of the barriers that are present in participating in transportation planning. So first we asked if there were barriers that respondents noticed. 57% of respondents said that there were barriers. We then asked what might those barriers be. 37% of respondents said that they are not aware of transportation planning opportunities. And 33% of respondents said that they're not available at the times that the meetings occur. We then asked people to describe their age range, and the greatest number of participants were 65 or above, with some participants from each age range, with notably fewer in the younger age categories. We asked people where they live. 66% of respondents live in Carson City. Almost 1/4 were from Douglas County and a small percentage from Lyon County. 61% of respondents work in Carson City, 14% in Douglas County. Most of the other category, about 1/4 of respondents identify as retired, so do not work. CAMPO conducted a thorough review of the outreach process with the goal to meaningfully engage with the community. Staff identified public outreach strategies toward accomplishing this goal through a menu of outreach methods detailed in the draft public participation plan. Staff released a survey and had over 100 participants. Staff developed an evaluation process in Section 6 of the plan for continued public participation progress, and will be evaluating public participation efforts within the annual network monitoring report. And finally, staff are asking for the approval of the draft public participation plan by the CAMPO board. And finally, I would like to thank our partners, Parametrics, particularly Jackie Kuchenmeister, Jennifer Valentine, Eric Nielsen, and especially Amy Cummings, who is here tonight, who helped in this public participation plan effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any members have a question? Ms. Schutte?
Thank you. Nice report. On the not aware of transportation planning opportunities, was that about not aware of the meeting or not aware of opportunity to participate? And I know it's the nuance is different, so I was just curious about that.
Well, I think this is a really interesting question. And I think this is a real opportunity for transportation planning. Not aware of transportation planning opportunities could mean many things. We didn't specify or ask people follow-up questions to the survey question. I think that there is an opportunity for planners to reach out to the community to educate them about how they can participate in planning. Planning is different in the fact that there's not a sense of urgency like a road project. You often don't see it right away. It takes a long time. And so I think that there's a real opportunity to educate the public about how we can engage.
Well, I
with
love
them.
that, and that's what I was thinking, because sometimes in the process of being part of planning, you realize why things are done the way they are. It's easy to say, well, the city should do this, or roads should be done this way, or why aren't we funding this? When really there is so much to the whole process. That includes planning, that includes, the metrics and the data and the safety and what it works and what doesn't, and the ripple effect of a decision and all of that. So that was the genesis of my question, but thank you, because I agree. Thanks.
I think I just have another general question, and maybe it's for the future if we're ever putting one of these together. I'd be very interested in how they obtained the survey itself. There's no response that lets me know is the 100 people that did this because they're within the standard and normal transportation community, like it was almost all people from Muscle Power, or was it, that I can't see that I get a cross section of the communities themselves. So I don't know if in the future, because I'm interested in ways of expanding our reach and to truly find out, no, we got what we got because somebody else helped us resubmit that out to their group, which we want them to do, but are we not reaching far enough across the systems to get more respondents and different thought processes? Like, I don't want to say common resident, that doesn't sound right, but it is, right? Am I getting a common resident answer, or am I getting professionals that are already dealing with this? So is it engineers from Loomis
Now
that
we're getting
answered it?
Jack bus users.
Am I
and are
getting,
we-
right, who are the respondents? And so that might help us in the future know how to reach further and give people more opportunities. So that's just an overall comment. But then I also, just to make sure, you're asking only for us to vote this evening on the public participation plan, not the analysis report, correct?
Correct.
I
The
just wanna make
analysis report is
Just
for your
information.
reference.
Right. Okay. Just need to make sure we're all on the same page, so, of what we're looking at. So does anybody else? Anything else? Oh,
Got
go
a
ahead.
comment?
Mr. Novak.
It's a good plan and a good report, and I guess, Kelly, you'll be in charge of this. Is anybody going to help you? or is this added to your other duties?
This is a big part of what I do as Campo staff. We will at some point be growing our staff, and the transportation director will help me. The transportation engineer. We're very much a group that helps each other out, and so I will also be helping out our agencies, Carson City, Douglas County, and Lyon County as well in their public participation efforts, in an effort to engage the public more. And so, yes, I think this is a very, very valuable way to spend our time.
And just adding to that, that probably includes coordination with NDOT on an ongoing basis.
Absolutely.
The general public, what's CAMPO, what's RTC, what's NDOT, there's a lot of coordination that needs to go on.
Back to that conversation about language.
Yes.
Well, not Spanish, English, different languages, but even
Common terms.
the common terms, absolutely.
Is there any public comment on our public participation plan? Anybody out there have some more ideas for us? No? Okay, I'll bring it back up here then for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the PPP as presented.
I second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect the motion was unanimous. Again, thanks for your hard work, Kelly, and team, because I know everything is truly a team. Thank you. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 5D, discussion and possible action regarding formal amendment 2303 to the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization's federal fiscal year 2023 to 2026 Transportation Improvement Program TIP to add 2 new projects into revised scope, limits, and funding across the multiple projects. Ms. Norman.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Kelly Norman for the record. As noted in the document revision history, this formal amendment to the Campo Transportation Improvement Program version 23-03 consists of splitting the District 3 5th Street project into 2 projects and updating the funding, adding the Carmine Street reconstruction project, clarifying the lead agency for Carson City projects, updating funding for Carson City Jack Transit Center and the Carson City Multi-Use Pathway Rehabilitation and Connection Project, updating Appendix 1 and Appendix 3. The public comment period for the TIP was open between June 24th and July 8th, 2023. There was 1 public comment regarding the exact funding amounts for the new Carmine Street reconstruction project from Carson City. That is detailed in Exhibit 3. In addition, there's some late material for additional updates to District 3 5th Street funding from Carson City. Packet pages 178, detailing Table 1, and 180, packet page 181, detailing the project details, will be updated accordingly. And with that, I'd be happy to take questions.
Does any member have a question? No? So just to put this a little clearer on the record so that we're all on the same page here too. So we received the late material. So that page will be updated a little bit more than just the 2 red marks, because you'll carry it out to the totals, you'll fix the top header. No change is easy again, right? You find one, now you got to do it throughout. And then the other one is the summary of all the project. That will also be updated to reflect the changes from the late material. So I just want to make sure we're all, instead of as presented, is as updated with late material and needed amendments from the late material. So that we're clear on our motion and where we're going on this. What caused the late material change?
I caught an error and we corrected it.
Okay. So those were our numbers to begin with, but somehow they didn't jump on the page. That happens. That happens when you get to making amendments. Okay, is there any, I thought you were just gonna tell me we got more money. I like my answer better than your answer, but anyway, is there any other public comment on this item? No? Okay, I'll bring it back up here then for a motion. Ms. Maloney, you want to try?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I move to formally amend CAMPO's federal fiscal year 2023 to 2026 TIP as presented.
With late material.
Oh, with late
And
material.
the additional updates
And the
due to
additional
late,
updates as discussed on the record.
the late material, right?
I will second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect that was unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 5E. This one's on the bottom of the page. You almost miss them. Discussion and possible action regarding Douglas County's application for the distribution of $85,000 in available Federal Transit Administration Section 5339A program funds to purchase an Americans with Disabilities Act accessible transport van for the Douglas Area Rural Transit Program. They're DART. Ms. Norman.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Kelly Norman. On March 17th of this year, CAMPO advertised a call for projects and began accepting grant applications for the FTA Section 5339A program. The FTA Section 5339 program aims to improve the condition of capital transit assets by providing funds to transit operators to replace, rehabilitate, or purchase buses or bus-related facilities. CAMPO received one grant application for the use of these funds. Staff reviewed the applicable criteria and eligible activities utilizing the checklist included in Exhibit 1. The applicant meets the basic eligibility requirements required by the CAMPO to receive FTA Section 5339 program funding. CAMPO staff recommend awarding $85,000 to Douglas County for the purchase of an ADA-compliant vehicle for use with the DART, or Douglas Area Rural Transit Program. Staff plan to open another call for projects for the remaining FTA Section 5339 funding of $144,458 in the coming months as well. And with that, I'd be happy to take questions.
Does any member have a question? This is a good yes, right? John's looking at me. It's a good yes.
Yeah, this is a good yes. Our Community Service Division really does a fantastic job with the disability and elderly in our county. They have the elderly daycare, and these vans are always full. It's a great service, so we appreciate the money here.
Is there any public comment on this item? Yeah, I don't see any. Mr. Erb, would you like the honor of the motion?
Sure, I'll take this. I move to award Douglas County $85,000 from the fiscal year 2022 to 2023 FTA 5339A funds for the use to purchase an ADA accessible transport van for the DART program.
Second.
I have multiple seconds. It's a good thing. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you. We're now on to agenda item 5F, discussion and possible action regarding the approval of a transit electrification grant program agreement with Sierra Pacific Power Company to provide CAMPO a total of $225,000 with no local match to complete a zero-emission transition plan. Ms. Schutte, may I have your disclosure, please?
Thank you. My nephew, Chris Martinovich, is the city staff presenter on this item. My disclosure and analysis from items 5A and 5B apply here as well. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his city service, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other Carson City resident. Therefore, I have no disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting.
Thank you so much. Mr. Martinovich?
Thank you,
just a
Madam Chair.
brief-
Yeah, sure. So just quick summary of this one. It's executing an agreement for $225,000. The money is deposited up front. It's not a reimbursement agreement, which is a little bit different, although we do have some reporting that we have to do on a quarterly basis. The program itself is awarded through NV Energy's ERTEP program. That's the acronym spelled out there. This program is through their transit category, so the program funding is only eligible to a select few agencies, such as the Nevada Department of Transportation, the 4 MPOs in the state, of which CAMPO is one, and the Tahoe Transportation District. No other agency could apply or receive any of this particular funding from this particular agreement. While the funding is coming through NV Energy as an electricity provider, the project will be for development of a zero-emission transition plan in compliance with FTA regulations, which includes other types of fuels, such as hydrogen or compressed natural gas, not just electricity, although that is one fuel. So the execution of this plan through a consultant RFP will be looking at all types of alternative low and no emission type of fuel vehicles. The idea being understanding not only Jack Transit, but working with our partner agencies in understanding regional needs for alternative fuel infrastructure, as well as looking at the city's fleet facilities and how, if we were to move to alternative fuels, regardless of what they are, how could we leverage potentially other funding sources and what enhancements and training does our staff need to who maintains our transit vehicles, could they use as part of that system? So want to look at all of that part of the plan, probably some coordination with the school district as well. And I'm sure I'm missing something, but I'm going to stop talking. So thank you.
Does any member have a question? Mr. Novak?
Just to point out, I watched the NDOT electric vehicle briefing this afternoon, and nothing in here conflicts with that, and it sounds like they'll work together just fine.
I appreciate you watching.
Thanks.
You have a question? Miss Maloney?
Sorry for not providing this comment earlier. It wasn't provided in the explanation of fiscal impact, but Chris, for the record, can you just confirm that the staff time, where the staff time is budgeted from and that it's available?
Staff time is eligible for part of the funding for this grant. So we plan to cut off a portion or portion out a portion of that funding for staff
That's
project
great.
management.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I guess that's really where my questions, I was really trying to track this one for the Exhibit A that is listed in the contract and project, electric set forth in Exhibit A. Is that the application? Is Exhibit A?
Correct. Exhibit A begins on packet page 242. The language is, it's actually on packet page 241 is where Exhibit A sort of starts. I'm not sure why NV Energy created it like this, but
Yeah,
that's the scope of work is the
is the
application.
application.
Yes.
Okay, and then the 225, and I guess that kind of follows along because it just says that you're going to follow the budget in the contract from Exhibit A, and it has it all as just other costs, 225. So that's pretty broad.
Correct. So
Okay. I was like, boy,
that is correct.
I like that.
This grant program is also meant to cover infrastructure. And so this isn't an infrastructure project. And so the category it fell under was other costs.
Okay. Okay, does anybody else? Just a little bit different than what we're used to in government. Everything's usually, every T is crossed and every I is dotted as to what we're gonna use the money for. And so it's like, I gotta have a magnifying glass that this was a lot easier than what we would do if we were granting money. But is there any public comment on this item? No? Just on the record too, it doesn't mean we're going to electrify anything. This is a planning document to help prepare Carson City for the future and federal regulations and everything that's coming down the pipeline. It's not a mandatory, we're gonna get a result here and now we have to do something.
The plan is going to, yes, generally, yes. The plan is going to outline if we were to pursue alternative fuels, electricity being one, the others being others, these are the steps we would need to take to get us if we wanted to do that. What type of fueling stations would we use? What type of training does our mechanics need? What type of safety provisions do we need to put in the fleet maintenance building to make sure if we use hydrogen, it doesn't, cause a fire or something like that? So those are the kinds of things this plan's going to more or less outline, is the process for alternative fuels.
And open the door for potential eligibility for other grants.
Correct. It opens the door to additional FTA, specifically FTA 5339C funding, where we're not eligible to receive that funding today.
Okay, thanks.
Any other? Nothing, and again, no other? Okay, no public comments. I will accept a motion. Let's do this one. Okay, Mr. Dotson.
I move to approve the agreement as presented and to authorize the transportation manager to execute the agreement and future amendments regarding extensions of time and changes in funding not exceeding 10% of the present amount.
Do I have a second?
I will second.
Okay. Mr. Novak, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect that was unanimous. Thank you. We're now on to agenda item 6, which is our non-action items. Mr. Martinovich, anything to share with us?
A couple of minor items. Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I wanted to note that we still have 2 open positions. Our transit coordinator and our transportation planner analyst position are still open. We have not received all that many applicants, and the ones we have received and made offers to have turned us down. So we're not able to hire those positions at this time. We're still doing the best we can, particularly on the transit side. It's getting hard, I'll just say that. Otherwise, positive news on the staffing front. I'd like to note that Kelly is our now senior transportation planner. She was promoted this past week, so congratulations to Kelly on that. On terms of project items, we are working with NDOT and Kimley Horn again on our local road safety plan. We're developing a committee to attend a workshop and working with different agencies in the area, including the Sheriff's Office, the Fire Department, Public Works staff, and a variety of other partner agencies, Lyon County and Douglas County, pulling those groups together and starting that process. It's just in the early stages getting together, but there's definitely more to come on that as far as identifying, the safety needs and ways we can improve safety in our community. Certainly an important topic. And lastly, we're still waiting to hear from NDOT. Sandra slipped out on our TAP applications that were submitted back in April. We haven't heard on notification. Wanted to provide the board an update on that. Should we receive information, obviously there'll be grants and agreements that will come to this board, but I have nothing to share. So yeah, there we go. That's what I have. Thank you.
Does any member have any comment they'd like to share? Mr. Novak?
Yeah, just quick, we haven't heard anything from NDOT on the 395 corridor study yet. They're still trying to fire up on that, right?
There was a kickoff meeting a few weeks ago, and that's as much as I know at this point.
Okay. All right, and then I saw it today, some of us might be involved, it's CAMPO, but the annual Tahoe Summit is the same day as our next meeting. It's August 9th, the Wednesday, up at Kings Beach.
I will note that we do not anticipate an August 9th meeting for the CAMPO board, so I'll let board members know that, and I'll touch on the RTC item when we get to that particular meeting. But right now, there are no items planned for the August CAMPO board.
Perfect. So you can go to that.
It was the morning meeting anyway.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Anybody else? Miss Maloney?
A couple months ago, we did a recognition of Motorcycle Safety Month at the recommendation of our member from Lyon County, and I just wanted you provided the recommendation to play with your kids, spot the motorcycle in the car. We've been playing for 2 months, and now as my 5-year-old is full right in the middle talking about his snack motorcycle, continue talking, and he doesn't understand the difference between jet skis or OHVs, off-highway vehicles. They're all motorcycles, but it's been a really fantastic game, and I wanted to thank you for the recommendation, and again, bring awareness to motorcycle safety. And if you haven't played the game with your kids, you should, because it's changed the lives of my kids. So thanks for the recommendation.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. No, not seeing any other member comments. We're now on to final public comment. Okay, not seeing any. Then we are adjourned as CAMPO, and we'll come back at 6 o'clock, hopefully for RTC. Thank you, everyone. Good meeting. Get that. evening, everyone. I'm going to call the Regional Transportation Commission to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Bagwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Schutte, Commissioner Dodson,
Here.
Commissioner Novak,
Here.
Commissioner Maloney,
Here.
Commissioner, am I missing somebody? No, I guess
Did we all
not.
say here?
Yeah.
We all said
yeah.
here, so you're
Oh,
good.
a quorum's present. Sorry, I
Just
can't
went
hear very
blank.
well. Ears are plugged.
No problem. We have a quorum, so we will move on with agenda item number 3, our public comment. Is there any opening public comment? Seeing none, we're going to move on to agenda item 4, which is approval of our minutes of June 14th, 2023. Are there any correction, changes, or updates needed? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion for approval.
I move to approve the minutes of June 14th, 2023.
I will second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. We're now on to agenda item 5A. This is a discussion-only item, just as a reminder. Presentation regarding the Carson City Transit Center feasibility study, including the identification of a recommended location and potential improvements for Jack. Mr. Martinovich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll take us through this item related to the feasibility study. Just some background to begin with. The impetus for this transit center feasibility study began following the completion of the 2019 Coordinated Human Services Plan, in which identified, among a number of things, but one of which was looking at enhancements of a downtown transit center in the downtown area, transit center in the downtown area for Jump Around Carson. 2021, this study was kicked off with LSC being the consultant supporting that. They weren't able to attend tonight. So as background, the existing transit center site is located on North Plaza Street. There are a number of existing site challenges, including ADA accessibility, shade in hot days like we're experiencing or will be experiencing this weekend. In the wintertime, wind and snow and rain challenges. Everyone tends to crowd in there. And then there's limited signing, no information regarding the passenger information in terms of route information or scheduling or things like that. ADA compliance issues, the road's got some holes. I'm hoping we've gotten those patched, but there's definitely some road issues out there. And then restrooms for both drivers and passengers, although drivers is a one of note there. This area is also served by our regional transit providers, including RTC Washoe and Tahoe as well. So there's mutual benefit to this particular downtown location. As part of the study, we looked at a variety of kind of ideal needs for a downtown transit center, taking into account all those factors that we had received from concerns and identified needs, and outlined this plan here for kind of idealized transit center at a location downtown, consisting of these elements listed here on this table. In addition to identifying kind of what the need is, we evaluated a number of sites in the downtown region, generally centered around the existing location on North Plaza Street, but also other locations in the area of Spear and Stewart Street, where a lot of our routes tend to already go, so not looking to change significant route directions. And those locations we evaluated are shown here on this page. An evaluation process was initiated for those 6 sites that looked at these items here on the screen, weighting them and scoring them for a variety of factors. The details of these are included in the report. But from this information, we were able to kind of narrow down the sites and find some existing constraints with some of the sites that make them less feasible for a long-term location. So following that evaluation, the short list of sites was identified here, 3 sites, on one site being the existing one on North Plaza Street, the second site being on Robinson Street, and the third site there on Spear Street between Fall and Stewart, adjacent to those parking lots. So we went through another process similar to the first. Well, I'll go into these sites in more detail. So the existing site here is the existing transit center. This was what kind of the conceptual idea would look like. You'd have a large building in the area of the sidewalk, some other landscaping and shade structures, seating areas. The building would house a restroom and information related to routes and scheduling and real-time information. In general, the street would be converted to one-way with an area for bus parking, and then the rest of the street would be open for one-way traffic northbound to allow access into those existing parking lots and on both the north and south side of the streets, as well as access on Caroline. So conversion of the one-way, allowing that extra space to account for that building. Site 2 is on Robinson Street. This site would operate similarly, although Robinson would remain two-way. It sort of wraps around on Plaza Street. The main activity of the site would be on that building located in the corner of Plaza and Robinson. The most challenging component of this site is one, the space constraints, but two, the required acquisition of a portion of the federal land that's owned by the Government Services Administration. Through coordination with them, they're pretty much a hard no, but maybe not fully door closed, but definitely challenges with acquisition of federal property. So that's one of the challenges with this particular site. And then the third site would be on Spear Street. Would essentially take the entire street, and you'd have buses on both sides of a central island, where that's where the building and area would be. This is probably the most passenger-friendly site, and then it's the shortest distance to move from the building to the bus or between buses if you're transferring. So those are the three sites. Each have their benefits and challenges, but through a similar evaluation process, looking at these criteria here on the screen, we were able to kind of narrow down and weigh these different factors against the three sites. And ultimately, Site 1 was the highest weighted site for Jack Transit improvements. There's two components of Site 1 I want to bring up, and one is the long-term component, which is the version we saw back here on this particular slide, and then an interim solution. And so there are still some challenges that need to be worked out with any potential long-term solution for a transit center, including, well, I'll touch on those in a second. But so specifically, we looked at some short-term recommendations to the existing site, being that was the site of met the needs of the best. What can we do in the short term while we address some of the long-term challenges associated with a larger improvement? So we have identified a number of items that we could do immediately. One of the things we could do is we could redo or add additional shelters and shade structures, or adjust the existing shade structures to provide more protection from wind and rain and things like that. We could add more lighting for some of the site security concerns, upgrade ADA compliance at the intersections and the curb ramps on Plaza and Washington and Robinson, repave the road and fix some of the potholes and cracks that are occurring out there. We can put a fence up between the sidewalk and the federal property so that folks don't go wandering off and laying under trees, which is a definite concern of the federal parcel. We can put some signing up similar to what Parks and Recreation and Open Space do on their parks. We have those kiosk signs with the panels on them. Simple bolt-down signs like that could provide route and scheduled information to passengers in the area. And other miscellaneous improvements, new signs for the bus stops and things like that, curb paint. Those could be done easily without property acquisitions and would not preclude any other additional future improvements, whether they're at that location or at another location anywhere in downtown. So I think those are relatively immediate, short-term improvements that could be made at this particular site. Cost estimate for those types of improvement is generally $234,000. Estimated time frame to start that would be around 2025. We'd still have to go through some regulatory items because some of the funding we would have for this would be FTA funding. But we do have existing grants, existing funding available. We have existing match available through the Redevelopment Authority should we choose to move forward with that. So this could be implemented in a much shorter term recommendation than the longer term recommendation, which is shown here on the screen with the construction of a building and revamping of Plaza Street to a one-way as previously discussed. This site as identified in the plan was really the best one based on the information available to us today and based on what we know of today of what's out there of allowing for growth and flexibility for Jump Around Carson. There are no property impacts or acquisitions associated with this, unlike the Robinson site or potentially the Spear Street site. Obviously, there's a conversion of Plaza Street to a one-way and providing additional pedestrian safety because of that. There's also some coordination that we could do with this site related to zero emission transition plan that was discussed at the CAMPO board. We could potentially incorporate alternative fuel charging, hydrogen, whatever it happens to be at this site. Should that go forward? That's one of the things that I think would need to be worked out as one of the items that makes this a longer term recommendation. Overall cost of this would be closer to 3.4 million. Obviously, that's a much more significant investment, and we don't have the federal funding today established for this, nor do we have the match. Although I think we could easily chase a number of grants that could fund this through the FTA or other sources. You know, the big picture is there's a lot of potential change in that area, and so there's a lot of continued coordination with adjacent property owners that I think could be valuable over the long term. But you know, based on the information we have right now, this was the recommendation of the long-term site. Following some additional coordination with adjacent property owners regarding a few specific items, we did do some outreach as some concerns were raised about the time capsule or the monument that's located on the federal building. We coordinated specifically with the Government Services Administration, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and as well as the Washoe Tribe. No one had any specific concerns related to this monument so long as we don't touch it, and we always provide access to it, which was always in the plan. So I think in this particular case, we're going to do that and leave this alone, obviously. Other issues that we definitely need to consider working out, and this is part of a larger conversation, is in regards to, you know, who's going to maintain a future building should one be built. Is that going to be the city under its facilities or the city under Jump Around Carson, you know, Transportation Division, or could it be put on a future contract operator as part of their responsibilities? That's certainly that could be discussed and added pretty easily. It's not uncommon in the industry. And then available funding, not only for the construction, but also for that long-term maintenance. Where does that come from? How does that occur? What is the cost of that and things like that? So those are the additional considerations that, you know, still need to be worked out over the long term. They're not something that we can necessarily pinpoint that they're perfect today, because things always change and things adjust as things happen. So based on this information, the plan would be, at this point, obviously receive input from the board. It's information only, because we're definitely looking for input on, you know, maybe we're finished, maybe we're good. These are the recommendations. We'll worry about when to implement them in the future. Or it's like, no, we want you to look at this, this, and that. And that's really what we're here to do, is sort of identify what the next steps of this study is. You know, identify potential funding sources. We have the funding sources for the short-term recommendation. We could move forward and execute those in relatively short order. There is still some design, minimal design with the short term. A little bit of environmental that we'd have to check some boxes related to historic properties and things like that. Obviously, continued coordination with the property owners is definitely important. And we could target construction of the short-term recommendation for 2025. Long-term would be 2028 or beyond, given those constraints in the funding. So that's what I have. Happy to take input on this particular item. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member have a comment, thoughts at this point? Mr. Novak?
I'll start, since I used to work there.
At
Not
which,
anymore.
the old B&T, no.
No, not that old.
Go ahead. Yeah, that didn't come out right. Go ahead.
It's okay. No, I like the short-term and term improvements, those things that really do need to be done. I mean, your process did screen quite a few things. I still have some concerns about longer-term transit, number of routes and expansion. You know, I think you said that if we had more buses, more routes, this would probably still work. But is this still the best location when there's downtown development and redevelopment going on? You know, the whole Nugget property still has master plans. You know, if we did change some of the routes, is still this the best centroid for running your whole system? So I think at this point, they did a good job and came up with some good recommendations, and you did analyze those fairly. So, you know, I kind of like the way you've done that. But if you go to the full-blown recommended one, you got to go through a NEPA analysis, right? And there'll be historic things, and you'll go to public input, and I'd expect folks in the federal building won't like it. You know, I can give you comments right now, but just having worked there and seen the issues in the past, and I don't think, you know, Carson or Jack really spent too much money building what you have today. You got by on a shoestring, and it works. It really does work. So with that, I'll just let the other folks comment.
Anybody else want to comment? Ms. Schutte?
Thank you for the information. And what you were mentioning, I think Site 1 is, for several reasons, the best location, one being, you know, it's established and that's kind of the routine that folks are in, and you have that room for expansion. I think Site 3, you know, your comment about the most user-friendly, that definitely is a good plan B. Site 2 seemed, between the required acquisition, the hard no, and the complications time-wise, et cetera, that one would be my third. My question for the short-term improvements, could some of those shade structures, the lighting, could that be repurposed when the construction actually took place? Do you think?
I think it's definitely possible. I mean, in terms of shade structures, it would be looking at, do our shelters provide adequate shade or wind protection? Yes or no, coupled with making sure we don't have people living in them. So that's definitely a
Correct.
consideration we always consider. You know, purchasing a new shelter, making sure, you know, we wouldn't just throw that away. So that could be moved or relocated. In terms of lighting, we're looking at putting lighting in our shelters as well as specifically street lighting, making sure
Right,
there's
right,
adequate
that's-
street lighting. And that would probably be the one that would have to be moved to a degree, depending on how many we put and where they would be located. If we move the curb gutter and sidewalk out a little bit, those street lights at their existing location would probably have to move with them. So that's probably the one thing that would have to be adjusted.
Okay. To Mr. Novak's comment about the federal building and so perhaps some concern or pushback if it stayed at that location, do you think improvements would help offset some of the pushback? Because to me, again, this has been established, so it's not like we're bringing in a Jack Transit Center. It's been there. And so I would imagine, but I could be wrong, that improvements could help alleviate some of the problems that are currently taking place.
And that's the concept with the fence, is that people are looking for shade in the summer and they're going and standing under the trees or next to the bushes and things. I think that landscape used to have lawn and stuff as well at once upon a time. And so having that little bit of a barrier, I'm not talking like chain link, I mean,
Sure.
Something more decorative, could separate and prevent people from just walking over and sitting under a tree while they wait for their,
Right.
the bus to arrive.
Cool. Thank you.
Ms. Maloney?
A lot of work went into this. I thought it was a really well done document. So kudos to staff and the consultant. LSC always does a really good job. At a couple meetings ago or several meetings ago, there was a lot of discussion about this, as I recall. And I think it was you, Mayor Bagwell, who suggested that there was some sort of retreat or some discussion at the board level about long-term funding for transit. And I have, I'm here as an at-large member of RTC representing community members, and all I've heard, from my neighbors is just, we need to be mindful about our tax dollars and where they're going. And so I unfortunately don't wear that hat of the supervisor and how to balance all that money. And so for me, I'm not sure that I can commit or, want to commit this big of an investment, until that direction has come from the Board of Supervisors as to the long-term availability of general fund to support Jack. And I've provided these comments to Chris, just we need to get clear on the operations and maintenance of what that structure and what that will entail, and the future of the operating contract in general. So, I thought the document's great for its purpose now. I'd love to, get direction from the supervisors on sort of, in the near future, what that funding outlook looks like, so that, us with that delegated authority can provide consistent direction to staff so that we're clear and staff are clear on where to go. But no technical or substantive comments on the document. It was really fantastic. Good job.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. When you look at everything that we do at a Board of Supervisors level, everything is within a 5-year projection model, right? We're using CIPs and where are we going and why, and it's all programmed out. Doesn't mean we necessarily in the second year of the 5-year plan, it doesn't mean they're automatically funded, but the whole idea is we're always in this 5-year cycle, and that's where we're concentrating our efforts. And I just know from my other hat that the CIP dollars were dollars to do construction and additional supplemental money for general fund is decreasing greatly. Our last 4 months of sales tax has been negative. You know, we're not gaining, so those aren't good. That's not a good economic sign that we're going to have some good boost of 2 or 3 million of unanticipated dollars that we could put to this project. And so that's really why I recommend this goes into a retreat discussion, because it's how does Jack fit in all the needs, right? It's easy for us as this committee because we're just prioritizing transportation, which is our job from this committee. But the board needs to understand it in the full realm of everything we're trying to accomplish. So I think this is a wonderful report and a great baseline document to discuss in the retreat, right? Do we want to add 1 bus stop, 2 bus stops, 5 bus stops? And if we do, this is the 5 or 10-year RTC, the Jack Transit plan that I can see lining out. Additional bus stops, blank in fiscal year, whatever, and this year and that year. And that we're really programming that out and deciding how that fits in the overall competition for CIP and general fund dollars. So great job on this. I don't find any faults or any false premise of where you're going or you want to go. I just caution that just in my first review of it, there's no $3.2 million ready by 2028. Like I said, I'm already worried about the 5-year projections that we have right now if the sales tax doesn't start picking up. So great job. Great job. Is there any public comment on other ideas or things they see for the Jack Transit Center? Nope, don't see any. Is that enough for you to? It's just a discussion only, so.
Just discussion only. Our plan going forward is to pretty much it's finished, right? Essentially take the word draft off.
Correct.
We would have it available for us in the future at a future retreat. I would like to do maybe some signing or just some really low-level improvements to provide some information to passengers at the transit center, but no upgrades to purchasing buildings or any of that. That's obviously not where we're going, and that's fine. I think we need to do some cleanup of the existing site and move forward in that direction. We have funding to do that without any additional CIP or any other funding outside of what's already been obligated. So that's where I'd like to go, if that's at the pleasure of the commission.
I don't think we see any issues. Again, it's just a discussion-only item, but I don't see any overall objections to some of the smaller low-hanging fruit or something, as we would call it in the world. But
as the last point of discussion, does this board want to see this study as a formal item, or are we good with this for now?
We're good for now.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Again, I didn't have any public comments, so then we'll move on to agenda item 5B, which is again a discussion-only item for District 3 East 5th Street pavement project, including a summary of the project's revised scope, design status, funding, and interim roundabout implementation options. Whew. Did I just give your whole speech? Oh, no. Okay,
right,
Brian,
good
we're
to go.
making you talk this time.
Okay.
We've let you off the hook for too many meetings, so give us a little run through on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian Byrne, Transportation Engineer. I'll be going over the District 3 5th Street Reconstruction Project update today. Previously, in March of 2022, the project was selected to incorporate Design Alternative 1, which incorporated 2 north and southbound lanes and added a right turn lane at the 5th Street roundabout. In addition to the roundabout improvements, 5th Street from Fairview to Marsh Road will undergo pavement preservation and minor rehabilitation improvements. Given the budget constraints of the project, on May 10th of this year, the board directed staff to pause design on the roundabout until additional funding could be identified and continue with design and construction of the eastern portion of the Fifth Street project. In addition, evaluate temporary enhancements to the roundabout. With the change in scope, we need to adjust the project's budget, which is outlined here. The only change to the project's budget is within the STBG funding, highlighted in the orange. The original STBG budget was $2.366 million. As we move into the new scope, we'll be reducing this amount by $984,000, leaving $1.382 million of STBG funds in the project. As we move into the additional funding will be reallocated to the existing Colorado Street CDBG and pavement rehabilitation project and the new project, District 1 Carmine Street rehabilitation project. At this moment, we are not showing any changes to the RT fund or the VNT fund, as these will go towards additional improvements on Fifth Street and with pavement patching, curb and gutter repairs, and sidewalk improvements. The project will move forward with finalizing the design for Fifth Street from Carson River Road to Marsh Road, which will incorporate 9 intersections with ADA improvements, pavement rehabilitation, pavement preservation, curb and gutters, sidewalk repairs, pavement patching, and landscaping. The schedule will continue as before with the final design of Fifth Street completing this fall. Bidding will follow at the end of the year, and construction expected to begin in the beginning of spring. As we jump back over to the roundabout, we have begun evaluating the temporary mitigations to address the morning peak hour traffic by incorporating temporary traffic metering. The city is being supported by a consultant to help us follow proper guidelines and analyze the roundabout from a pre and post condition to confidently provide a recommendation for improvements. This analysis will take place over a short period of time while school is in session. Highlighted in this picture here would be a very good example of something that it would look like with these kind of temporary signals at 1 or 2 of the legs, and would be coordinated signal timings to regulate traffic. So we would be following the appropriate guidelines outlined in the NCHRP report, and like I said, which is being supported through our consultant. We will continue to seek additional funding options for the ultimate design and construction of the design alternative 1 for the roundabout. Lastly, staff will continue coordination with the state lands for an expansion of the existing easement. The state lands indicated that purchasing of any of the land is not an option at this time. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Just not friendly, are they? Does any member have a question? We're getting no's from all these other governments I'm hearing today.
I know, right?
No's.
Something that
Right?
I'd mentioned to Chris previously, I'm sure you guys are well aware, this is not the only state land Carson City would like to have, right? Or use or swap or whatever. So is there a comprehensive approach, or are you just going to look at this little one? Or what's the best way to move ahead? Or you talk to the guy on Mountain Street, you know? How do you
I
go
shan't
ahead?
discuss it.
Okay.
No, we are looking for other properties. I guess we'll be honest there. There are other things we're looking for, but I don't want to say unfairly that they're difficult to work with, but they just are. Their philosophy is it's state property and we don't want to give it up. We might need it sometime, and right. And so the trick is to get the right mix of your stopping our progress of very needy projects that are also your same residents that would enjoy the benefits of what we're doing. And that's really the message I've been trying to work on lately is they're joint residents. I mean, they're a state resident and a city resident. And if this is a project that is an enhancement, they're public purpose activities. So you never know. We're working on it.
But I did see in what the governor signed for his budget, there's quite a few public works projects in Carson City at the state level.
There is.
So you can get to talk to him for those?
I did.
Okay, good.
I did. So, Ms. Maloney?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I understand that there are some neighbors in that neighborhood that have had some sort of longstanding concerns with the landscaping and the median. I couldn't tell from the design, but I also know there's the utility lifts, the water lift station nearby there. Can you just confirm for the record, just that to the best of our ability, are we addressing those concerns as part of these landscaping improvements?
Yeah, so staff went out and evaluated those areas and are working on incorporating those into the design. So yes, we will be addressing some of the landscape issues in that corridor.
Awesome. Thank you.
Can you be a little bit more specific on that landscaping? So on Fifth Street itself, between Hell's Bells and the school, that median, is that what we're talking about, an area?
Yeah, so in locations in the median along Fifth, I don't have the plans in front of me to give exact details, but I know we're going through to remove some trees, relocate, and add some trees, and also repair some of the curb and gutter, take care of some of the root tree issues that are causing some kind of pavement failures. So yes, we in that area, yes.
Okay, thank you. Is anybody else, any public comment on this item? No? Okay. Well, thank you. Again, that was just a discussion and presentation. So we're now on agenda item 5C. This one is for action. Discussion and possible action regarding contract number 233-00302 for Black Eagle Consulting to perform material testing for the Edmonds multi-use path project for a total not to exceed amount of $57,000. Does anyone have any questions of Brian on this contract or standard language? No one has any questions. Is there any public comment on this particular contract? No? I'll accept a motion. Go ahead.
I move to approve the contract as presented.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Brian. Okay, we're now on to agenda item number 6, which is to you, Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. The only item I wanted to specifically mention tonight was in regards to the August 9th Regional Transportation Commission meeting. We will not be having a meeting on August 9th. We will be scheduling a special meeting either August 2nd in the early afternoon or August 16th. At some point, I'm going to review and confirm the availability of this room with the Parks Recreation and Open Space Department. The topic on the discussion would be award of the contract operator for Jump Around Carson. So look for that. Otherwise, there are no other items planned at this point. Obviously, if something comes up that's pressing, we'll add that to the agenda. But at this point, look for a special meeting invitation in the future, near future.
Okay, item 6B.
Item 6B, I didn't have any other than one item to highlight. Our crews are out crack sealing all over the place, so you're seeing that crack seal operation number starting to climb. I anticipate that for the next several months. I also want to note, somewhat related to this, we're getting a demonstration project tomorrow through the local partnership authority agency with LTAP is what they're called, with the university to do some different methodologies of crack sealing. They're providing some new materials, and we're attending a demonstration tomorrow at Governor's Field and see how this product works for a potential solution to crack sealing options. So more to come on that. Looking for any and all options in terms of how can we keep our roads good. So.
How did that, we had the one on Solomon that we did.
We did,
How
yeah.
did that one turn out?
Well, we're still looking. It's only been a couple of years, so
Okay.
we're still monitoring it. I think it's going to take a few years before we really start seeing it.
Before you know.
We'll know because it's compared to other pavement adjacent to it. That's kind of
Okay.
the
I just
check.
remembered we did that.
Yep,
Wait, we
we
did one.
did that. We did that.
The recesses of my mind. Okay. 5 years? I got to remember that one that long? Oh, okay.
I'll remember that one for you later.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions on the report? Just again, thanks staff immensely. They are out working, and it is
They are out all the time. Yep.
very noticeable, and I think it's important that we give a shout out to that. Okay, 6C. Handy dandy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian Byrne, Transportation Engineer. I'll be going through the project status report. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to interrupt and ask. I'll start off with the multi-use path, the Edmond Sports Complex. This project has awarded the contractor and previously just approved for the material testing. So this project will be underway starting next month now.
And we made budget on the contract?
Yes.
Yeah. It's not enough of them that we've made budget, so this is good news.
Next is the Root Street Rehabilitation Project. This project will be combined with the future phase, and there's no recent updates. Our Robinson Area Sewer Replacement Project. This project is complete and is being closed out. The project will be removed from the project status report. The RT funds were fully spent for this project. The remaining funds will be distributed to the utility accounts listed above. Next is our Colorado Street CBG pavement project. The water main along Colorado Street is complete, and the contractor is continuing utility work until mid-July. The sidewalk demolition and installation has begun and will continue through August.
And is this the project we just added money from the other? So are these numbers here including the change?
Not yet until
the
that
change.
agreement is finalized through
Without change.
NDOT.
Just making sure. Okay.
Next is the Fifth Street reconstruction project. We're working on completing the 90% design plans and the previous presentation with the update. We're looking to finalize the design of this project in October. Please note that the numbers of the budget are reflective of the changes I presented earlier.
So these ones are reflective.
Yes,
You're doing that to see if we're paying attention.
always. Next is our East William Complete Street project. The consultant is developing the 90% design plans. The NEPA documents have been reviewed and are close to being finalized. A 30-day public comment period is open regarding impacts to Mills Park as a result of the project improvements.
You know, will you do me a favor? What document was I reading the other day? But just every time you put something out, if you are utilizing numbers, would you make sure they match? Because that one still showed like 18 million instead of 21, and I should have, I'll think about it, but please just double check whenever you're putting something out that the number matches our reports, because that one's understated
Okay.
by a couple million, and I'm thinking it's the federally directed spending
Mhm.
that wasn't added in the other document. So I know there's a ton of numbers and a ton of stuff, but if you could just double check when you guys are putting documents out there. 'Cause
Definitely.
I use these
Yes.
all the time, so, okay, thank you.
Thanks. Next is the DMV multi-use path project. So this project, the staff are working on 90% design plans. This is to be submitted to NDOT in the mid of next month. Efforts have been initiated for environmental permitting, and the final design for this project is expected to be completed in this fall and constructed beginning next year.
I want to make a note on this project. I apologize, Brian. One of the environmental permitting requirements is coordination with the Army Corps of Engineers, which, if you are familiar with time that it takes to coordinate with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, it could be extensive. So we're hopeful that it'll be a quick turnaround. It's a very minor thing, but I wanted to just let the commission know that there's potential for delay on this one as a result of that coordination. So, thank you.
Next, we have our Appian Way traffic signal and intersection project. The consultant is working on 100% design plans. The completion of the design is anticipated for this summer, and the city is actively seeking to establish a formal agreement to facilitate the completion of the design of the fourth leg. The city is also initiating NEPA reviews. Our Desatoya ADA Improvement CBG project. This project is under construction and is anticipated to be completed this month. We have a site walkthrough scheduled for the 18th. Our District 5 Medical Parkway Preservation Project. This project was awarded in April, and the contractor is expected to begin construction this month on it. This was slightly delayed just to line up with the Long Line project as well. Our District 5 Mountain Street Preservation Project. The project is substantially completed and the contractor is working on the punch list items.
Is that just, wow, and we've only spent 24,000 to date and they're just about done?
Yeah, it was kind of a quick project, so we just haven't seen that last.
They'll just invoice
Yeah.
the whole thing all at once. I thought,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Follow, we have our District 5 Winnie Lane Reconstruction Project. The consultant is working on the 50% design plans and is expected to continue until the fall. And construction is anticipated for early next year. And last is our West Carson Vulnerable User Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project. Staff is finalizing the survey data with the consultant and the preliminary design has begun. The design will continue towards 30% plans and which are expected later this fall.
Anybody have any?
That's all I have.
Any questions? Nothing? Great job. Okay. Anybody have anything to share with one another? We're all having a good summer? We all had vacations? We all, no? What's that? Okay. I went to DC for a week. All right, then we'll move on to final public comment. Okay, seeing none, nobody objects. We're adjourned. Thank you all for a good meeting.